Okay, great. We are live here, and sorry, I usually have that on gallery view. For the second half of Quantum Leap, we actually had the first half is going to get rescheduled with Dawn Lyons. If you were trying to catch Dawn, she had some construction at her house. But we are here live with our special guest, Monica Burneikis, and a prominent attorney here in the East Bay area. And we're going to get to her in a second. Thanks for joining us, Monica. But I did want to have Cory, my co-host, Cory, not introduce himself and say how you are, Cory.
Hey everyone, Cory Knott here, business coach with Take Wing Coaching, and just excited to share that we are on our 21st episode of Bourbon and Business tonight, or Bourbon and Business Smash, and launched that as a podcast this month. So that's the other thing. If people after listening to the Quantum Leap podcast want to get on more of just a straight up business discussion and drink some bourbon, join us at 6 o'clock on Tuesday.
Great, and we'll continue. Maybe you'll continue a discussion of business issues then. And I've been just a quick check-in. We are promoting our May 18th event, and I'm going to be doing. That's going to actually be a live event, and I know as much as criminal justice issues are in the news, I don't think we're going to discuss that today. I want to talk to Monica about her and her background, but if anybody wants to express any criminal justice views, you are welcome to use this as a platform. With that, I wanted to introduce Monica, who is I find to be a very rare case because she's an attorney, but she's also a great networker and just kind of a bright personality. So with that, I want to let her introduce herself because I got Carrie here in the background. Monica, could you just tell us about yourself, your professional background, and your story?
Sure, and thank you so much for having me, David and Cory. I'm honored to be part of your podcast today. So I am a plaintiff side personal injury attorney, and I have my own firm called Burneikis Law. We're based in Oakland, California. A lot of people always ask me, what does plaintiff side personal injury mean? And what that means is that I represent people who have been injured because of something that someone else has done or has not done. I only represent victims of injury. And I've been doing that for 16 years, almost exclusively since I passed the bar back in 2005. I worked in a law firm, various law firms, for about 15 years, and then made the decision last year to branch out on my own and start my own firm, which has been just the best decision I've ever made. As far as background is concerned, I'm a Bay Area native. I went to Santa Clara University School of Law, born and raised in Silicon Valley. And then in about 2011, I moved up to San Francisco, and now I'm over in Oakland.
Great. Thanks a lot, Monica. And I just think it was a very extraordinary thing what you did, starting a new business during COVID. And it's funny that it actually worked out the right way in a lot of ways. And I just wanted to just ask you about that specific challenge in terms of, one, kind of why you decided to do your new business, and how the unique COVID environment impacted that decision and what you did there.
Well, you're absolutely right, David. It was nothing short of a challenge to launch a new business in the middle of a global pandemic, and actually right at the beginning of the pandemic, which was when I did it. It turned out to be perfect timing, and I'll get into that. But as far as the decision, I had spent, as I mentioned earlier, about 14, 15 years working in various law firms. And I had been thinking about going out on my own for a few years. But as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, there's always something else that, takes your attention away from your goals. There's always something else that has to get done that's pressing on you. And so I have found, both in this situation as well as just in life in general, that if you don't set a goal for yourself and a deadline, that things may never happen. things just keep getting pushed out. And so at the end of 2019, I told myself that 2020 was going to be the year that I started my own firm. And as that happened, the stars aligned and the process of me separating from my firm actually began 1 week after the state went into the shutdown. So it was, I believe we shut down on March 13th, and on March 20th was the date that the separation process started. And it turned out to be the ideal time because, again, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, there's not a lot of free time in our lives. I think that's especially true when you live in the Bay Area. You have households where both parents are working, and if you have a family and you're working full time, there just aren't a lot of extra hours in the day. And so when things shut down, the world all of a sudden became very quiet. The courts were closed. A lot of people weren't working in the beginning because they really were just in this state of uncertainty. And what that ended up happening, or what that ended up doing, was it created a lot of time for me. I actually, for the first time in 16 years, had some time on my plate. I had some free time. And it was exactly what I needed to allow myself to negotiate the separation from my firm and to launch my new business, which, when you're launching a business, there's so much that goes into it that I don't even think that I truly appreciated. A lot of administrative work and, everything from getting your website going to, hiring professionals to assist you, to getting bank accounts open, to finding space to rent. Things that I probably would not have had the time to do had I not had this process begin when the world became quiet, when the shutdown began. I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason and timing is always perfect. And for me, it actually ended up being that the timing was perfect. It was also incredibly scary, as starting a business is. But it was especially scary because, as I mentioned earlier, or maybe I didn't, about 85% of my practice comes out of motor vehicle accidents, whether it's car on car or bike on car or pedestrian on car. And when the shutdown started, nobody was driving anymore. And so I can remember, I have a vivid memory of looking at my TV in the morning and watching the news. And when the traffic would come on air, for the first time ever, it was completely green. There were no red spots because nobody was driving. And what happened was nobody was getting in accidents. And those are the people that I represent. So it was a little scary thinking, okay, my phone's not ringing. But once I launched my firm was when people started getting back on the roadway. And so again, timing just seemed to work out perfectly.
Great to hear. And I just know that I have a issue here with my production assistant and a farm of roly-polies here. That's a very pressing emergency. But I do think that this time during COVID creates really a great time for new market entrants with the kind of disruption. So if you're good at what you do, which you are, and you have those certain skill sets for networking in the legal field, that it can actually end up being a good time to make it happen for your business, especially since of where your desire to make it happen. So I just think it's a very encouraging and inspiring story, and I think ended up being the right time for you because it was the right time for you. So I did want to ask you about your ideal referral partners or power partners. You have a very unique system of referring business and getting business. If you don't mind sharing a bit of that with us.
Sure. As I'm sure you can appreciate, I don't get a lot of repeat clients. So there's lawyers out there that practice in certain fields, whether it's business law or real estate, and they have what's called a book of business, where they have clients that come to them over and over and over again anytime a dispute arises, or there's an issue that comes up, or a new contract that has to be formed. But working in plaintiff side personal injury, representing the victims of injury, I don't get a lot of people that come to me more than once. It has happened, but it happens very rarely. So for that reason, it's important that I am well known throughout the community. So ideally, I'll be getting referrals from past clients, from friends, from family. It is the greatest compliment in the world when I get referred a case from an attorney who I had opposed on a case, because that says to me that he or she was impressed with the work that I provided and the representation that I provided for my client. Now, in California, there's a rule of professional conduct that allows for fee sharing between licensed attorneys, assuming the client is aware of it and gives written consent. And so for that reason, I offer to licensed attorneys in California referral fees. If they refer me a case that I end up taking, and if the client does provide knowing consent in writing, such that it complies with the provisions of the rule, then I will provide a 25% referral fee to that attorney. So attorneys, it really is a win-win situation for the client. You know, attorneys like to be able to provide that referral because what that means is that somebody got in touch with them. And so it helps with their own reputation if they're able to refer that case or that client to an attorney who they know will provide superior representation and has a history of getting excellent results for their clients. So it really is a win-win in that situation.
Great. Thanks for sharing that with us. Cory and I are very interested in the different types of referral relationships, and I just think that's a interesting case to note. And I did want to turn it over to Cory for a few questions.
Here. Yeah. So given that you do plaintiff representation, and so it's generally people with injuries, who would you actually say makes an ideal client for you? Because this is one of those things I think, it's especially in your arena, sometimes people think, oh, it's just anybody, but I imagine that there's probably some people you really like to work with or help, or what goes on with that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always clients who are ideal, but it's a hard question to answer given the type of law that I practice, because all of my clients are dealing with a less than ideal situation. Every single client that comes to me has sustained some level of injury, whether it is a minor injury or a major catastrophic injury or even a death in their family. So, I tend to handle the cases that involve the more significant injuries, the catastrophic injuries. And I don't like necessarily using the term catastrophic because it makes people think that they have to, lose a limb in order for me to entertain their case. And that's not true. Catastrophic injuries can be as simple as a broken bone or, a dislocated joint. I get a lot of cases involving back injuries. I also get a lot of cases involving traumatic brain injuries, and that is an area that I have really been focusing in over about the past 8 to 10 years. Of course, I also handle the wrongful death cases, and those are especially heart-wrenching because they involve a family member who unfortunately has ended up dying because of, what could have been just a freak accident. Most of the time it's because of the negligence of somebody else, something that somebody else was doing that they shouldn't have been doing or was not doing that they should have been doing. So, I won't turn down, or I won't necessarily not listen to clients who have had less significant injuries. I will evaluate every case to see if it is a case that would fit within the parameters that I would be willing to accept. But ideally, of course, you have to have someone who is not at fault and who has sustained an injury.
Sorry about that. I have a lot of background noise too, so I'm trying to do the same thing as David, kind of keep that on the mute there.
Yeah.
So what would you say are your keys to success as a thriving business owner? Especially because, I'm sure you balance a personal life and other things going on too.
Yeah, COVID has been very interesting in that we have all gotten a look into other people's personal lives. I've had situations where I've been on, important networking meetings or business meetings or mediations, and I'm sort of, pushing my child out of the screen because I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they tend to pop in. And I think that it has given us just a lot of just patience and tolerance. And understanding that a lot of us didn't have before. And maybe it's not that we didn't have it, but we just weren't in an opportunity to really express it. So with that, I am balancing a personal life, a family, 2 young children. I'm balancing starting a business and being, a very busy attorney. Trial attorney. So what are my keys to success? I think number one is perspective, and really trying to keep everything in perspective. It can be incredibly overwhelming to have a lot on your plate. And especially during the past year, it seems to hit us all at the same time. We are not just attorneys, and then we come home and we're a mom or a dad, and then we have to deal with housework later on. Before it was very compartmentalized, and now since COVID it has been incredibly challenging because it's all at once. I could be in the middle of a mediation and have to on a break run inside and make sure that my 7-year-old is on her Zoom call for class. So keeping it in perspective, realizing that I'm not the only one that's dealing with this, that other people all over this country are going through the same or similar challenges or worse, understanding, having the perspective to know that I'm very blessed, and that even though I have these challenges, that things could be a lot worse. So perspective is one of the things that really keeps me headed in the right direction, and an ability to stay calm when things are overwhelming, because I have had so many moments this past year where I have been incredibly overwhelmed with everything that has been going on, as I'm sure everybody has. And so, just being able to take a step back and to realize that, this is an overwhelming time for everybody. And we just need to, realize that it's going to get better and that we're not alone. And really the knowledge that I have, knowing that what I am doing in my professional life is helping other people, because that is really what keeps me going. I feel like I am on the right side of things. I don't take cases that I think don't have merit. I won't accept those cases. I vet every single case that comes my way because I want to make sure that what happened to my client was in fact through no fault of their own, and that the injury that they sustain is genuine. And when I can meet those 2 criteria, when I can satisfy myself that those 2 criteria are present, then I know deep down that everything that I do for that client is with the ultimate goal of helping them. Every client that comes to me is going through a life-altering event, whether they've sustained a fairly minor injury or it's incredibly significant. And it's for instance, a brain injury that will change their lives. These injuries are life-altering. If it's just for 6 months, it's life-altering for 6 months, but it could be life-altering for the rest of the time that they're here on this earth. And knowing that I am going to be their voice and be their advocate and help them get justice and compensation for what happened to them really keeps me going.
Nice. Thank you.
Well put. And I mean, that's something we love to look for on this show, or people with that sense of integrity and core values and really service, and that's what it takes to be a successful business owner. But not everybody exhibits those traits. And, I think you definitely demonstrate why we're honored to have you on the show, especially in a field of attorneys get some plaque here and there for some of them. People don't always feel like they're the most honest or motivated by the great intentions. I just find that you really exhibit kind of a model attorney mindset, from where you come from with your service and some of your core values. I did want to ask you, since we have a bit more time, about that in terms of, where do you see yourself as being set apart from others who maybe are in your same classification of what you do, or maybe others in kind of a neighboring fields for, say your competitors, so to speak?
I really pride myself on taking time to get to know my clients and speaking to them about what they've been through, having conversations with them about how what has happened to them has changed their life. And because I take the time to do that, I'm able to, to the best of my ability, put myself in their shoes. And the only way that an attorney can advocate on behalf of their client is to know what their client has gone through and to both empathize and sympathize with them. Every client has a different experience, at least in what I do. There's no one client who has sustained an injury that has the exact same experience and has had their life changed in the exact same way. So I'll never be able to say, oh, so-and-so, client Smith had a broken leg. Well, I had, client Jones had a broken leg. And so I know what you're going through, because that's just simply is not true. There is a term that people use for us, and it's that we're counselors of the law. But I think that we're more than just counselors of the law, especially in the plaintiff's personal injury realm. But we are, to a certain extent, counselors for our clients. I tell every single one of my clients, if you're frustrated because of what you're experiencing, because of whatever injury you have sustained, if you're sad, if you're upset, if you're emotional, whether it's from the injury or from this litigation process, call me. Even if all you want is a sounding board, even if all you want is to get something off your chest, call me. That is what I'm here for. And by me offering that to my clients, I am learning from them when they do call me. So that really helps.
Great. And I just had one more question in case Cory had any, unless Cory has any follow-up about, another strength that I see with you and also that makes you unique. And I mentioned it earlier about you being an attorney, but also a great networker. I don't know if I'm sure you probably see yourself a bit unique in that, class, but do you have any tips for or secrets to success for how you kind of approach networking, especially during COVID, or things that you've found out that might be useful to others, so to speak?
I've always been a social person, so networking for me comes naturally. I really enjoy talking to people. It's probably been obvious. I have no shortage of words. But in terms of tips, it really is just getting yourself out there and taking advantage of the situation, the very unique situation that COVID has presented in terms of our ability to network. We now, and hopefully this is going to come back by the end of the year, but we have not been allowed to meet in person. So that's been challenging. But the unique situation is that we now can do things by video that a lot of people did not appreciate before. A lot of groups did not appreciate. I mean, even the court system wouldn't do things by video. There was this sort of, belief that you had to meet with somebody in person, that you had to be with somebody face to face in order to have an effective sort of platform. And COVID has taught us that that is not true, that we are allowed and can meet over video and have just as effective a communication or a meeting as we would have in person. And what's interesting about that is that it's even more effective in that I am now able to network with people that are not here in the Bay Area. Before, I was limited in terms of, going to meetings with people, or, having lunches with people that were here within driving distance. If I did want to schedule something that was further away, I had to hop on a plane. I don't have to do that now. I've been scheduling meetings with attorneys that are down in Southern California or in Chicago or Nashville. And I'm networking with people in those areas and getting the word out there that, hey, Mr. Nashville attorney, if you know a personal injury client in the Bay Area, someone that's looking for an attorney, I'm here. Or, hey, Miss Chicago attorney, I would love to be able to refer you clients if I hear about something in that area. So really, it's taking advantage of the ability to meet with people that you otherwise wouldn't be able to meet with, and really just dive in and do that now while we have the chance, because I hope that it doesn't go away. I think that this platform, this video meeting platform, will continue in some way, but we should all just take advantage of it while we can.
Yeah, that was very well put. And I think that goes to the advantages that I think the unique advantages under COVID that certain folks have who do get used to some of these new modes of operating. I feel the same way, that you can meet with way more people in shorter amount of time. So it's more efficient, especially for that opening meeting or the first or second meeting. You decide if you want to establish a working relationship with that person or not. Whereas, in the old days where we're just going to do it in person, there's way less like top slots on your calendar to do that. So that was, very telling and well put. Cory, do you have any closing comments before we close out here? And want to thank Monica for coming on and sharing her story and a lot of these insights.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just was networking with somebody in the UK this morning. So he had reached out to me on LinkedIn, and we have some similar company background, but he has a very different experience of it. And I don't know that, I'm sure we would have run into each other at a global conference eventually, even though I and my wife split off from that business a while ago. But this way we actually have, it's almost like an alumni association at this point, and it's great.
Yeah, I think it really is an acceleration in the ability to get out there and, meet people. So, of course, there's certain things you can only do in person. That's very interesting what you said about the legal field in terms of the meetings. And I'm sure, the meeting intensive nature, if you can do more online, it'll maybe make it easier on the courts or certain things to do on video that you had to maybe do in person before. So. Well, great. Well, we'll leave it there for now. We'd love to have you come back at some point and check in. And I think I appreciate all the insights, and have a nice day. David Kirsten closing out Quantum Leap with my co-host Cory and I, Monica. Thank you.
Thank you.